How much do you actually think you know about pilots and flight attendants? Do you know why a captain would carry a gun, for example? Or how you could enter the cargo hold via the cabin? Stay tuned to find out. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're all doing great today. Most of you already know a thing or two about aviation, but I'm super sure that I'm able to surprise you with a couple of things that you didn't know. There are also loads of misconceptions about pilots and flight attendants. So here we go. Can flight attendants and pilots fly for free? Depending on the airline they fly for, they can either fly for free or for a fraction of the cost of a standard ticket. Whenever you fly for a Spanish company or own a Spanish license, you can fly for free with all other Spanish companies. This meant that I could take any Vueling, Iberia or Air Europa flight to any destination, depending on the captain's discretion. The disadvantage is that the captain can always decide to leave you behind, simply because he wants to or because the flight is full and the jump seat is no option. Just a little side note, by the way, Vueling is a great airline and most of the captains that work there do their utmost best to take the crew home. I traveled countless of times from Milan to Amsterdam and they were always the nicest people in the world. Don't try to do that with the low cost from England or Ireland because you won't stand a chance. In America, this way of proceeding or traveling for crew is considered normal, but in Europe it isn't. Most airlines offer staff travel programs to their employees, and these work on if space available basis. The employee pays a small ticket fee, which is just like a fraction of the regular price. The downside of trying to travel that way is that you never know if you can actually make the flight or not, until you're actually seated on board. And if there's no space available, you have to take the next flight. And the next flight might also be full as well, so it continues forever. A spot is based on your seniority number, which can work in your advantage or disadvantage. Let's continue with the flight attendants. Did you know that flight attendants have very strict rules when it comes to appearance? For women, it is mandatory to wear makeup. They have to use foundation, blush, mascara, lipstick with a visible color and shape their eyebrows. The same counts for their hair. The hair has to be in either a neat knot, tail or braid. And the tail shouldn't be longer than 30 centimeters. Hair can only be worn loose when it's like at 2 centimeters above the shoulder. Nails should be natural or red and may not be longer than 0.5 centimeters from the fingertip. For men, it's way easier. They just need to be properly trimmed and shaved, and the same counts for their hair, like 2 centimeters above the shoulder. Before each flight, the purser checks the nails, hair and uniform of each flight attendant, and if one of them does not meet the requirements, he or she can go home. Some airlines have stricter rules. For example, in the Middle East, requirements can go extremely far, and that includes checking the weight of the flight attendants. As the flight attendants are in direct contact with the customer, their representation says something about the company and is therefore very important. Pilots have to abide to similar rules, but they are often less strict. Another thing is that flight attendants often have an earlier reporting time. This means that they need to be at the airport before the pilots arrive. And why is that? Well, flight attendants need to brief each other about the flight and their preparation simply takes longer. It is not uncommon for flight attendants to be on board of the aircraft before the pilots arrive at the gate. Sometimes boarding already begun before the pilots board the aircraft. This is no problem because pilots can do the walk around, set up the plane and brief each other all within 15 to 20 minutes if necessary. Most pilots already prepare their flight at home while having a cup of coffee or tea, and they just check the weather, the state of the aircraft, the routing, NOTAMs, etc. And when arriving in the crew room, it's simply a quick chat about any specialties, fuel and items on the hill list, and we are ready to go. A pilot sometimes takes custody of a gun. In the business aviation, it can happen that a passenger travels with armed bodyguards. These bodyguards can carry pistols, and normally guns are transported in a secured cargo hold. But in most business jets, the cargo hold is accessible to the passenger compartment. Usually, an unlocked door in the lavatory provides access to the cargo hold in a business jet. just so you know. So a cargo hold in a business jet is not a suitable option to store a gun, right? So what to do with it then? You can give it to the captain. Yes, that is right. The gun is unloaded and handed over to the captain. He or she stores it in a secure place in the cockpit. And I bet you didn't know about that one, right? Pilots and flight attendants receive safety training on a regular basis. You probably knew that, but did you also know that the training for flight attendants is way more extensive? Flight attendants know all the ins and outs about the cabin, the emergency equipment, and they know exactly what to do in numerous situations regarding passengers and which actions to take in emergency situations. Before each flight, a question on a random flashcard is being asked to each crew member, and if their answer is wrong, they have one other chance to answer correctly, or they can go home. We as pilots also have an extensive training, but this kind of questioning is not part of the routine. Conclusion: just be nice and listen to the flight attendants, because they might save your life one day. The commander has the authority to restrain a passenger, and this can be done with handcuffs or zip ties. So why do they have this authority? Well, chances are that you never witnessed an unruly passenger, but if you did, I guess you can imagine why some passengers need to be restrained. This isn't taken lightly, since it is the last step when dealing with an unruly passenger. Flight attendants are usually the first people to deal with an unruly passenger, and they can issue warnings, and if the passenger still doesn't listen to the crew has the right to issue a notice of violation, which serves as a last warning. If the passenger continues to misbehave, restraining is the last resort, followed by a police escort at the destination or en route alternate if it was deemed necessary to divert. Just behave, people. It makes everybody's life a lot easier. Pilots and flight attendants are allowed to sleep on board the aircraft. Most people are aware of this, and it is called controlled rest. And for the pilots, it means that they can take turns napping while in cruise. That doesn't mean though that one of the pilots is always asleep, right? But they can if they feel a need for it. Every airline has specific rules in place for controlled rest. You cannot just sleep like for hours and wake up before top of the descent. But did you know that most long-haul aircrafts have actual beds for the crew? So take the Boeing 777 for example. The 777 has 2 OCRs, also called overhead crew rest compartments, and there's one in the front and one in the rear of the cabin. So next time you are halfway through your 12-hour flight and you ask yourself where all the crew members are, or at least some of them, it could be that they are asleep just above your head. Pilots and flight attendants date each other. Yes, they do. But think about this for a second. Isn't that the case with all professions? It's likely that a nurse dates a doctor or a teacher dates another teacher. It's only logical because they spend a lot of time together. Pilots and flight attendants sometimes stay in different sorts of hotel rooms while on layover. For example, it can be the case that pilots stay in suites while flight attendants stay in regular rooms. This has to do with certain agreements between airlines and hotels. It might be that the airline insists that pilots stay in rooms at higher floors, since higher floors are usually a bit more quiet. At some airlines, pilots and flight attendants don't even stay at the same hotel. Like, you can think about airlines in the Middle East. How well does the crew know each other? It's highly unlikely, when you fly for a big airline, that the airline pilots of your next flight have flown together before. This has to do with the fact that for every aircraft there are about 10 pilots on average. If you take a fleet of just 50 aircraft, that means that there are 500 pilots. With just 2 positions per flight, chances are slim that you see each other more than once. So, how do they know what to do? How can they work together as a team when they've never seen each other before? Well, airlines train their pilots in such a way that everyone can follow the same standard operating procedures, or SOPs. Basically, everyone does exactly the same thing at the same time. And by doing so, you can work together without ever having met. As a pilot, you know what to expect during all phases of flight, because everyone is trained in the same way. I hope that makes sense. Well, that's it for now. I hope that you learned something today. If you feel like there's something I missed, make sure to leave a comment below, because we can all learn from each other, which is great. So, thank you so much for watching this video. Check out my Instagram for daily posts and stories about my aviation life. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. clicking the notification bell will ensure you never miss out any of my videos. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye guys.